And I'd like to introduce one of my colleagues, Mike Ryan. He's on my team. He's spent the last year of his life really driving our centers of excellence around both DevOps and automation. And he's going to talk to you a little bit more about all the details that go into the HOV lane and everything that he's worked on. So, Mike?
Thank you, Eric. So as he said, we're moving very aggressively to the cloud. I joined the team last year because I knew Verisk was very interested in that migration, but I wasn't prepared for the breadth that Eric touched on in terms of the number of divisions we have within Verisk and the speed at which they were looking to move to the cloud. So to give you an understanding of the scope of what we're dealing with, by the end of the year, we're on track to have somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 to 80 accounts in Amazon across our business units. Each one of those has multiple virtual private clouds operating in multiple regions. So if you put those multipliers together, you very quickly realize we have a lot of environments we have to manage. So how do we get there? Well, our business users are smart people. They're smart about cloud, they're smart about technology. So what we had to do was leverage that smart, leverage their ability to develop applications, and yet not compromise our security as we move things to the cloud. So I'm going to walk a little bit through the details of how we achieve this with HOV. So overall, essentially, it's a framework for automating everything. And so we decompose that into the orchestration piece, which is defining when you click a button and say, I want to deploy my workload or deploy my application, how many virtual machines, how many load balancers? Are you building a database? Are there other Amazon services that you want to deploy? Those all get orchestrated and deployed as part of that one click. And we very quickly realized as we started modeling our applications that the app models needed to be arbitrarily deep, arbitrarily complex, N-tier applications that we wanted to move out to the cloud. But as we did a few of them, we realized that even though they were very diverse workloads against very diverse data sets, there was a lot of commonality. And we've arrived at about a dozen of these foundation components that I and my team manage on behalf of the enterprise. So the key thing to understand is that the app model, the business users model their own applications, and they're able to deploy their applications. It's a logical representation of what their application is. So they're able to specify things that are sensible to business technologists, like I want to build load balanced web servers. And I want them to be Windows 2016. And I want 3 of them. I want them to have a couple of CPUs, 8 gigs of RAM, and 100 gigs of storage. They then make a call to the CloudFormation template that is the component tier that builds these load balanced servers. They pass all of that logical information into that component tier where it's physicalized. So we've got Lambda functions, which for those of you who don't know, that's Amazon's serverless platform. And we're able to take those inputs and be able to resolve for this business unit, let's say they're deploying a UAT environment in the US East 1 region. We do a lookup and figure out where do we want to place that workload for this application. So which VPC does that go into? And furthermore, what are the subnets that are configured to handle this workload? Similarly, when they say we want a Windows 2016 server, they don't have to worry about which machine image because we maintain through our automation a continuous set of gold images that are hardened, encrypted, and up to date. If they're using a relational database, if they want to model Postgres, they just say, I want a Postgres server. They don't have to make decisions about Is it going to be public or private, or is it going to be encrypted? We make those decisions for them. They're private. They're encrypted. They don't have a choice. When they want to have their load balancer publicly facing, we don't give them a choice. The VMs that we build only have private IPs on them. The load balancer has a public IP, but will only accept traffic from our WAF. And those VMs in the autoscaling group will only accept traffic from the load balancer we built for them. And the application team doesn't have to worry about any of that stuff. They just say, I want load balanced servers, and I want to push them out. So at this point, we've got our orchestrated environment. We've deployed a set of machines and other components. That's good. What's next? What's next is what happens inside the machine, and that's why we're all here. We're using Chef. In particular, we're using OpsWorks for Chef Automate. We have about we have half a dozen instances up and running now for different business units. Anybody else using OWCA? Anyone in the crowd? Nobody? Anybody like the name OWCA? It is one of the most awesome services Amazon has. We have found a great deal of value in using this because it's very easy to hand to our team in India and say, guys, build another one. And they're able to package everything together and make it delivered to the business for a set of people who had no experience with Chef at all. So this was really powerful for us. It made it very easy for a business user or a business unit to start adopting Chef. And it's been really helpful. But the name, we've got so much brain power in the room, so many awesome chefers, I think we can crowdsource a better name. Anyone agree? So we have modeled and we have built probably about a dozen applications through OWCA. And we've been able to reuse cookbooks across the different business units. We're in the process of standing up our own private supermarket to further foster that adoption. For some application teams whose applications are more stable, they do quarterly releases if that, they're able to not only model and deploy the middleware through Chef, but the application code as well. So we have applications that use Tomcat and also will push out the application code, the WAR file, through Chef. But for those that are using a more DevOps model, that have more agile deployments in their plans, we've integrated with AWS Code Deploy for being able to push that out. Now, how do we get the config management piece and the CI/CD piece, how do we get those modeled in the HOV lane? It goes back to the app modeling piece and that logical reference. So an application team says, I want to use Chef. They pass that in as a parameter. And I want to put my IAS version 1 or type 1 on the machine. And so the components tier that we manage for the business, we use that to call another Lambda function to figure out what is the OWCA instance for this particular business unit and create the client config on the VM on the fly. And we also get the bootstrap PEM file so that when that node registers itself with the Chef server, it can authenticate securely. So we're able to be very confident that the machines joining our Chef server are supposed to be there. We then create a run list dynamically on the machines. We put down a baseline for the operating system, enabling the InfoSec and operations teams to be able to put whatever agents they want, antivirus, there's a couple of others. That way they can manage this across the enterprise and push out that baseline across all of our OWCA instances and very easily ensure that everybody is at the same baseline. And that personality, which gets passed in from the app model, that gets put in to the run list as well. And that is the wrapper cookbook that's managed by the application team. And if they want to use CI and CD, the application team just puts a marker in their CloudFormation saying, I want to use Code Deploy. And then all of the metadata needed to set up the S3 buckets, to set up the groups, to set up the roles that are needed to enable it, and to have Chef push out the agent, the code deploy agent, onto the VM as well. That just happens for the business. They don't have to think about it. They don't have to worry about it. All they know is when their build finishes, the output of that CloudFormation gives them all the metadata they need, so that if they're using Jenkins and they've got the plugin for Jenkins, they can take that metadata from the output, create a Jenkins job that will just automatically push code out to the cloud environment. So for those in the audience mathematically inclined, you can figure that we have approaching 100 accounts and a half a dozen OWCA instances. So we've done a lot in this space. I think we've made very good progress in modeling our applications and coming up with the framework, but there's a lot of work still to be done. So like others, we're hiring. So if what Eric and I talked about is interesting to you, if it's something you think you might like to be a part of, we're around and we'd love to talk to you. Thank you.